وَلِعُرَى الْجَاحِدِينَ وَالْمَارِقِينَ فَاصِمَةً, and to the handles or those things that the atheists and the heretics cling to break it. وَلِبَاغِيَ الشَّكِّ وَالشِّرْكِ قَاهِرًا, and to the transgressor with doubt and shirk who overwhelms them. وَلِيَتْبَعَ الْحَقِّ وَالْإِحْسَانِ نَاصِرًا, and for those who follow the truth and virtue, He gives victory. فَصَلَوَاتُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَأَصْحَابِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ. And then he says, in the beginning of this book, فَصْلٌ فِي مَعْرِفَةِ النَّفْسِ, the chapter on knowledge of the self. اعلم أن مفتاح معرفة الله تعالى هو معرفة النفس كما قال سبحانه وتعالى سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. Know that the key to knowledge of Allah, the Exalted, is knowledge of yourself. Allah says, glory be to Him, we will show them our signs in the horizon and in themselves, on the horizon and in themselves, until this becomes clear to them that it's true. وَقَالَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. Whoever knows, and the Prophet ﷺ said, it's generally not considered a hadith. Some of the ulama do consider it a hadith, but it's generally not considered a hadith, but it is a sound statement. Whoever knows his self certainly knows his Lord. And it's said that it's a statement of Yahya ibn Ma'ad al-Razi, and Imam al-Nawawi said it's not thabit. This is not a confirmed hadith. And some of them said it means whoever knows his self, man arafa nafsuhu bil-huduthi, arafa rabbahu bil-qidam. If you know that you're finite, you know your Lord's infinite. If you know that you're created, you know your Lord's uncreated. There are many interpretations of that statement, but generally some of the ulama actually wrote entire books just explaining that statement. So Imam al-Ghazali, if there was one area that he was not considered a master in, it's the science of a hadith. But I will say that by today's standards, he would probably be the greatest muhaddith alive. So when he says he wasn't a master of hadith, and he says that himself, it doesn't mean in any way that he didn't know. He knew hadith very well, but he was at a time when the great collections of hadith had already been gathered. So a lot of people tended to focus on fiqh, particularly usul, and on kalam. So that was his environment. But towards the end of his life, he did begin to seriously study ilm al-hadith. That was one of the things that he was doing at the last portion of his life. So those who criticize his knowledge of hadith are ignorant. And another thing that's important to remember, many of these ulama had their own chains. They had studied, they'd taken hadith. There are many, many hadiths. This is why Hafiz al-Iraqi, who did a critical edition of the Ihya and looked at all the hadiths in the Ihya, will often say, Lam ajid lahu asla. I didn't find a source for this hadith. They don't say la asla lahu, which is a very common thing. Modern hadith writers who criticize hadith will say la asla lahu. There's no origin for this hadith. Whereas these people knew that there are hadiths, we might not know the chain. So they would say, I didn't find a source for this hadith. Or if they knew it was fabricated, I mean, there are hadiths that are fabricated, and we know they're fabricated, and who fabricated them, then they would say it's mawdu'a. So he does have weak hadiths in his collection. But again, like many of the scholars have pointed out, he was not doing anything that people did not do at his time. Weak hadiths were used in Fadail al-A'mal, and most of the books of exhortation were filled with weak hadiths. Even the greatest of ulama have books with even the people that accused him of having weak hadiths have books with weak hadiths in them. Like Ibn al-Jawzi criticized some of his books. In fact, Talbisu Iblis, which a lot of people quote, he has some criticisms of Imam al-Ghazali. He got the name of his book from Imam al-Ghazali. Talbisu Iblis was, Imam al-Ghazali said, I hope to write a book which I'm going to entitle Talbisu Iblis, to show how Iblis has tricked so many of the Sufis and people that are on. So Ibn al-Jawzi wrote the book Talbisu Iblis to show how the Sufis had been tricked by Iblis. He got the idea from Imam al-Ghazali, but he criticized Imam al-Ghazali in the book. And Ibn al-Jawzi was a great alim. and نحسبهم من أولياء الله, from the people of wilaya, inshallah. So the ulama criticized each other, and that's just part of what ulama do. So I wouldn't take those things seriously. There's a lot of foolish people that read the criticisms of ulama, of other ulama. There's a lot of reasons why they criticize each other. Sometimes it's just hasad, flat out. Very common. And sometimes it's they genuinely think that this is a problem, and they could be wrong. And sometimes it's because during their time they do have a problem. Like during Ibn al-Jawzi's time, there was a real problem of extremism in Sufism. And so he wrote this book as a corrective, which is why Sidi Ahmed Zarruq says you have to be careful with that book, because he wrote it as a corrective. And when you write a corrective book, you will often go to the other extreme in order to create a corrective. So that's important to remember. So anyway, he mentions this hadith, and he says, وَلَيْسَ شَيْءٌ أَقْرَبَ إِلَيْكَ مِن نَفْسِكَ. There's nothing closer to you